LDWMMAC. I know this is the video y'all been waiting for. It's your boy the Coach. You're live on the Coach Show, the Coach Show Live. Okay, guys, a lot of you been hitting me up, man. I think, guys, and I appreciate all the love and support, man. I think I had about 30 plus people hit me up, man. Coach, what are your final thought analysis on Cris Cyborg versus Larissa Pacheco? Coach, come on, man. So, okay, here it is. All right, here are my thoughts. These are my thoughts, okay? I guess a lot of people, you were hoping that you would see the Cris Cyborg, the 26-year-old Cris Cyborg, the 27-year-old Cris Cyborg, the 28 to 29-year-old Cyborg. I think a lot of people was hoping that version of Cris Cyborg would come over here and just beat the hell out of Larissa Pacheco. No, that version of Cris Cyborg wasn't there. That version of Cris Cyborg hadn't been there for years, okay? The thing of it is, Cris Cyborg has had to evolve. She's a smart cookie. Cris Cyborg is very intelligent. She made adjustments to her game. She's learned how to evolve. And I hate to say that one of the best things that happened to Cris Cyborg was to be knocked out by Amanda Nunes. But man, Cris Cyborg has become a very versatile and complete fighter after that loss to Amanda Nunes. See, Cris did what most fighters won't do after that loss. And I'm telling you guys why that loss to Amanda Nunes was so significant. Cris took ownership. She took responsibility. She took responsibility for the fight. She took it. She owned it. She ate it. She said, listen, I went in there and I got excited and I wanted to knock Amanda Nunes out. I went in there and did it. You know, it was on me. It's on me. It's nobody's fault. It's not my team's fault. It's not. She said it was my fault. I did this. And in that aspect, as a fighter, I respect Cris Cyborg's mentality as a fighter. So, you guys wanted to see what version of Cris were you going to see? It's the version that Cris Cyborg had to show you. It's the version that she had to show you. Cris Cyborg had to be calculated. She can't stand in there and trade with this young gun. Larissa Pacheco is young. She explosive. She heavy-handed. And y'all want 39-year-old Cris Cyborg to stand in there and trade with this girl. Now, there were points in the fight where Cris Cyborg said, F it, and started trading with her. Cris got caught a few times. A younger version of Cris Cyborg probably wouldn't have got caught. Larissa Pacheco had Cris Cyborg bleeding over both eyelids. Something we've never really seen. The worst we've ever seen Cris Cyborg get cut in a fight is when she fought against Felicia Spencer. And Spencer hit her with that elbow and split Cris Cyborg's forehead wide open. But that was foretelling of what was to come. This is not the same Cris Cyborg, y'all. This is a very defensive Cris Cyborg. This is a Cris Cyborg that pumps a jab. This is a Cris Cyborg that takes the fight to the ground. This is a Cris Cyborg that seeks for submissions. I say it's a well-rounded fighter. Because back in the day, and I remember when people used to say, well, man, Cris Cyborg can't do nothing else. All she do is get in there, maul people, and slug it out. When does Cris ever use any kind of technique on her? She don't do anything else. Well, Cris Cyborg showed you she know how to wrestle. Cris Cyborg showed you that she know how to fish for submission. She showed you her wrestling. She showed you her jiu-jitsu. It was all on display. And I thought this version of Cris Cyborg had a damn good fight against a much younger opponent who was game. Larissa Pacheco was game. She wasn't afraid of Cris Cyborg. She wasn't afraid of the thought of being knocked out. Some points in the fight, I thought Larissa Pacheco was about to be knocked out. Larissa Pacheco ate some shots too. She ate more shots than Cris Cyborg did. The only thing is that when Larissa Pacheco landed critical shots, they did more damage. Larissa Pacheco ate a ass load of shots. Head kicks. She was getting jabbed to death. And Larissa Pacheco could not avoid, she don't know how to handle Cris Cyborg's takedowns. Now, this is the $1 million question that all of y'all want to know from me. What about hype job Harrison. Folks, understand. And I want y'all to look at these fights, because I always tell you guys, MMA math never works. But I want you to look at the fight. And you tell me, was Kayla Harrison actually able to easily take Larissa Pacheco down? Was it easy for Kayla Harrison to do it? It damn sure was easy for Cris Cyborg. Cris Cyborg could get this fight to the ground at any time she wanted to. That's how you know who won the fight. Cris Cyborg controlled this fight. I even agree with the judge's scorecard. I had it 3 rounds to 2 the first time I watched the fight. The second time, I had it 4 rounds to 1. Okay, and we can argue and say 3, but you cannot find more than 2 rounds to give Larissa Pacheco. You can't. Cris Cyborg, to be honest, dominated this fight. Now, from the eyes, you look at Cris Cyborg's face and you think, hell no, she didn't dominate this fight. But actually, she did. See, when we're talking about judging, when we're talking about scoring, when we're talking about technicality, Cris Cyborg dominated this fight. But Larissa Pacheco, when she landed, it counted. When Larissa Pacheco made contact with Cris Cyborg, oh, it counted. I mean, ripped Cris' face open. But Cris Cyborg was more dominant in most areas of the fight. I felt like they were pretty even on the feet. But I do felt like Cris Cyborg, the jab was the difference for Cris Cyborg. It's like Larissa Pacheco was trying to engage into these wild fisticuffs, and every time Larissa Pacheco would get going with an offensive with an offensive sequence, she gets stopped in her tracks by a jab. But I gotta give Larissa Pacheco credit, because damn, the girl's a hell of a counterpuncher. Larissa Pacheco got some nasty counters. And Larissa Pacheco has evolved. I just don't think that she got better hands than Cris Cyborg. And Larissa Pacheco could not avoid that overhand right. I don't care. I like Larissa Pacheco. He had to stand there on center line, and every time Cris Cyborg, she pumped the jab, throw the overhand right, Pacheco could not see it coming. She couldn't see the damn thing coming. Pacheco had good moments in the fight. She just didn't do enough to win. She didn't do enough to win. And the fact that Pacheco couldn't stop these takedowns, that's concerning. But on the other hand, she did a damn good job of stopping takedowns from Kayla Harrison, didn't she? That ought to answer y'all question. Could Cris Cyborg beat Kayla Harrison? That's an astounding yes. And honestly, I think Cris Cyborg will have an easier time fighting Kayla Harrison. That's in Coach Adamas mode. I think Cris Cyborg would have an easier time beating Kayla Harrison. Yeah, I think she would. Cris Cyborg she's too good. The problem with Cris Cyborg is she's too good. She's too good, she's skillful, she's evolved. Cris Cyborg can fight till she's 45. But I get it. It's time to retire. This didn't look like the same Cris Cyborg of old, y'all. It didn't. This Cris Cyborg is a little bit more hittable. And Larissa Pacheco even dropped Cris Cyborg. Pacheco dropped Cyborg and Cyborg dropped Pacheco. They dropped each other. But Cris Cyborg of old wouldn't have got dropped. Yes, I think Chris's assessment is correct. She feels that it's probably getting close to time for her to retire. I feel the exact same way. Nothing wrong with that. Cris Cyborg probably needs to start thinking about, hey, it's time to retire. It's time to hang it up. But folks, I want to see this fight again. I want to see this fight again. But for a woman that's about to retire, if Cris Cyborg said, no, I don't want to fight Pacheco again, I mean, the first time I'll ever get a pass for saying no. She's retiring. She's 39. It's about time to go. When you're 39 years old and you've been in the fight game for damn near 20 years, y'all, since Cris was a teenager, over 20 years. Yeah, that's a lot of fighting, y'all. And unfortunately, the body, this ain't something you do for 30 years, y'all. Fighting is just not the type of sport you do for 30 years. You can't do it. You can't. The body's going to break down. And Cris Cyborg she was hittable. And if Pacheco had more experience, Pacheco probably could have won this fight. It was a winnable fight. Cris Cyborg is just too good. That's my assessment on the fight. Maybe we'll talk about this on live stream.